2023 has been a series of ups and downs when it comes to new survival games. One in particular, the Shame game,
The Day Before,
has already come and gone, lasting just 4 days, and so, expecting that disaster to play out the way it did, I was already logging a bit of time in the Once Human beta, a self-described multiplayer open-world survival game set in a strange post-apocalyptic future. And so, when Starry Studios, the outfit behind Once Human, came calling, offering to sponsor this video, asking if I could take a look at their take on a survival shooter and give my honest thoughts and impressions, I accepted. My name is LtBuzzLitebeer, and welcome to my YouTube channel. If you like what you see, maybe consider hitting that big, beautiful subscribe button, and if you really like what you see, maybe also consider ringing the notifications bell to receive all my latest upload alerts.
System of failure.
I've dedicated quite a bit of time to covering The Day Before as it built up to its much-hyped launch and immediate closing. I covered it for the better part of 2 years, and I think we were all kind of getting burnt out on daily uploads of that disaster, me included. So, at this point, we all know what it was and how it went down. We were told and shown that the game was something completely different than the product that launched. And yeah, I just don't want to go there today. Anyways, armed with a bit of playtime under my belt and thoughts on it all, I wanted to post my impressions on what is arguably the anti-Day Before, Once Human. Now, I've been keeping an eye on this open-world, third-person survival game ever since I saw their reveal trailer about a year ago. And since then, it's been through an actual beta test, something we never saw out of The Day Before, along with streamed live footage coupled with a current beta test running through the end of December. So this is definitely not vaporware. It's a real product. And all of this from a game slated to drop in Q3 2024. So Starry Studios seems to be proactive here in getting as much feedback as early as possible prior to launch. Now, I'm going to be giving you a more thorough breakdown of some of my highs and lows that I've seen so far, along with my honest impressions throughout this video. Let's call it a work-in-progress review, but overall, I'm liking what I'm seeing. There's still some wonky mechanics that require quite a bit of finesse to activate, like the force pull powers and hitting actual targets, but from the first beta to now, the devs seem to have done quite a bit of work to improve on the game, to try to give it staying power in a crowded and talented survival game market. Over the past few weeks, the beta version of the game that I've been playing has been through a series of patches and hotfixes, and this is not always the case when it comes down to these beta tests. So again, it seems that the studio is trying to be proactive and iterate quickly while improving on the gameplay experience. Alright, now on to some of the specifics of Once Human. It is a multiplayer, open-world survival game set in an alternate post-apocalyptic future. And at this point, I've logged a pinch over 6 hours, and if I were trying to describe it to someone that has never seen the game in 30 seconds or less, I would have to say, think what would happen if you took the movements and perspective of The Division, the wild kind of paranormal vibes of Control, and the huge, resource-rich, massive open world and gathering of New World, and then you jammed them all into a blender. And then you let Tim Burton create an eerie world around it, along with some one-of-a-kind NPCs and boss encounters. Alright. Maybe that's a little over 30 seconds, but that's about as close as you can come to describing Once Human. And I know it all sounds like a wild mixture of genres, but probably what I've enjoyed most about this game is just how well it all seems to gel together. You see, most games in this genre just plop you down in a random location on the map, and while yes, you do have ultimate freedom to roam around and do as you please, the only requirement placed on you as a player is to survive. Once Human gives you that same freedom, but there's also direction and purpose in the form of objectives and a ton of varied progression mechanics and economies, and I dig that about the game. Now, once you make it through the overwhelming options involved with creating a character, and then a slightly mind-bending tutorial, you are literally dropped into the open world to begin your survival adventures. Throughout your explorations and clearing of strongholds and other smaller landmarks, expect to find a wide selection of consumables and other objects, which can then be broken down to base resources to be used later on in crafting. A typical character loadout includes 2 primary weapons, which could be anything from high-powered rifles over to crossbows, a melee weapon, which we would have never seen in the day before, and then you've got 5 pieces of armor: head, chest, gloves, pants, and boots. Now, many of these items can be looted in the open world, but the majority will be made through the crafting system. And here's where Once Human gets a bit convoluted. You see, there are individual crafting benches you must build, each requiring different materials to unlock, and each one of these benches is specialized. Want to make weapons? You need that bench. Want to make arrows or a pickaxe? That requires you to build a separate primary supplies workbench, and so on. Layers of complexity are great to see, but this system needs a bit of streamlining to make it function a bit better. And speaking of complexity, Once Human throws a lot at a player. There's the aforementioned crafting, which also includes improving items and modding them. There's a full-blown structure building system, like your base and the items inside, including quality of life features, crafting stations, and even furniture. You've also got resource gathering, like chopping down trees for lumber, minerals for smelting, killing wildlife for food, and a whole lot more. During your explorations, you'll pick up all sorts of random junk items that you can then break down using your disassembly bench to base resource items to be used later on in crafting recipes. You've got your territory terminal, which you first place down when building your camp. It requires a steady supply of items like wood and gravel in order to function. There's mods for your weapons and armor to enhance their abilities. You've got gear set bonuses for having a matching set, and even a massive progression tree called memetics, which are essentially skill points you earn and then place into the tree to unlock the ability to build better items, store more gear, and upgrade your armor and weapons even further. There's also a passive character buff mechanic, energy crafting consumption, rarities of materials and gear, and we haven't even stepped out of our base into the open world yet. Now onto what I feel are the 2 greatest strengths of Once Human, that being the open world variety and the combat. Now, I've mentioned the day before several times already, but these 2 games were actually designed around the same basic premise. Open world survival game, of course, with exploration, along with hardened strongholds to tackle, and vehicle transport in between points of interest. One delivered on that concept, the other became a failed extraction shooter. Now, Once Human's open world is this incredible and wild mix of environmental effects, public events, a large number of other players, wildlife, NPCs, and just about anything else you can dream up. I've stood in place and been struck by lightning during a thunderstorm. There's an entire system of rifts being used here, where you can be teleported back and forth between realms, and even hidden puzzle mechanics contained within the strongholds. I've been attacked by NPCs with burning spotlights in place of their heads, and seen some of the wildest open world bosses you can imagine, like this 6-legged beast with multiple hands underneath and an entire village on its back, or this monster with a radio tower for a head. Like I said earlier, it's like Tim Burton was given a blank check to create whatever he wanted for NPCs, bosses, and the overall environment. Which brings us to combat and movements. And as someone that has played multiple thousands of hours in the Division franchises, the movement speed and mechanics actually felt very natural to me. You've got things like combat roll, mantling, grounded reload mechanics, and even items like crouch and, of course, a full melee system, allowing for stealth gameplay. While aiming down the sights, you can enter first-person view for more exact aim movements. You've got things like grenades, a bunch of different ballistic weapons, and then you can even pick up some of those random NPC drops, like those spotlight heads I mentioned, or this wild suitcase tongue head combo thing that acts like a grenade launcher, and then you can use those against other enemy NPCs until the ammo runs out. Tack on things like survival mechanics involving a stamina, sanity, hydration, and hunger meter, all involving individual consumables and all tied to both positive and negative buffs, depending on how low each is. And yeah, there's just a lot of input coming in and requiring a player to be able to monitor and maintain it all simultaneously. Okay, let's talk performance, and my 4090 GPU seems to have had no issues running Once Human, and the Steam PC specs are only asking for an NVIDIA GeForce 970 on recommended, so minimal lifting requirements here. I had all the graphics settings on full max and played in 4K, and overall, the game looked pretty good, even great in certain areas, but I did see some hefty FPS dips, depending on how much was going on around me, especially when I was around a lot of other player bases, which you will see littering the entire open world. Now, some of this may have been due to my distance from the servers, as I live on the East Coast US, and I was connected to the Western region, but these were noticeable freezes. For PvE content, I can easily cover for those drops, but for PvP, which this game does have in certain zones of the map, encountering those snags would be a deal breaker. Now, their comms team seems to be pretty proactive, answering questions within their Discord and attempting to tackle the in-game issues, and this would be a great topic to address. All right, let's throw down some brutal honesty here. Once Human has a lot of positives already baked into the base game, and it checks a ton of boxes for any fan of survival games. I didn't really connect with most of that trippy tutorial sequence, but the character customization is insane, and once you were dropped into the open world, Once Human is packed with variety and challenge. It really acts like a true sandbox. I mean, if you want to spend 2 hours just resource farming, you can do that. Want to go full Rambo and hit dungeons and strongholds? There's that too. And of course, the high levels of complexity when it comes down to economics, crafting, NPC types, bosses, and progression. As I mentioned, I saw some performance issues, although I saw no crashes, and there are some major localization issues where the subtitles are just completely different than the spoken dialogue. Also, we have no idea what the game will bring in terms of monetization, because with a game that makes extensive use of progression and materials to craft, that facet could really open itself up to questionable microtransactions. Again, I've not been able to experience that side during the beta, and I'm just speculating here, but it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I'd like to end with this closing thought. I was interested enough in this game that I applied for and got into the beta before Starry Studios ever reached out to me. And again, thank you to them for the sponsorship on this video. I've also enjoyed Once Human enough that I'm going to continue to play it even after this video post, and hopefully that gives you an overall idea on where I stand on this game. Links to the game's Steam page and official Discord can be found in the video description. I know that their current open beta received far more applications than available spots, so it may be hit or miss gaining access, but I would recommend you at least try, just so you can experience it for yourself, and if you've made it into the beta already, let me know your thoughts on the game so far. Remember to hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell to receive my latest upload alerts. Likes, comments, shares are of course greatly appreciated. Thanks again for all the support, and until the next one, this is LtBuzzLitebeer, signing off.